Before the imperial selection of consorts, I was poisoned and lost my virtue to the guard Duan Ming in a narrow alley. Believing Duan Ming had done me a favor, I resigned myself to marrying into the Duan family. After our marriage, with my support, Duan Ming achieved great success. On the day he was appointed Grand General, beggars came to our door, brazenly declaring, "I am the lover with whom the general's wife committed adultery before her marriage." I ordered Duan Ming to drive them away, but he laughed maliciously. "It wasn't me who humiliated you in that alley, it was these 3 beggars. I merely picked up a corpse that day, never expecting to gain such wealth and honor for free." When I learned the truth, rage consumed me. I drew my hairpin to kill him, but he pushed me off the high platform. In agony, I saw myself surrounded by those beggars while Duan Ming embraced his young sweetheart, watching coldly. I died in resentment. When I opened my eyes again, I had reborn back to the night I was drugged. I was in the alley, my body burning with fever. The moment I realized I had reborn, I immediately pulled out my hairpin and stabbed it forcefully into my thigh. The lust poison within me was called immortal lust. Once activated, even a god devoid of desire would become a slave to primal urges. Only excruciating pain could keep me briefly lucid. Otherwise, I'd collapse in the alley like before, unable to tell if my tormentors were human or demon. My blurred vision finally sharpened. In the night breeze, I keenly caught another sound, a man's stifled gasps. In my past life, after losing my virtue, I collapsed in the alley, utterly disheveled. Duan Ming, the gatekeeper of the Shen household, was the first to find me. He carried me, my clothes askew and my body in disarray, through the streets, drawing stares as he navigated the crowds back to the Shen residence. By the time we arrived, the entire capital knew, Shen Qingxi, sole daughter of the imperial merchant family Shen, had spent the night in a back alley with a guard. Before that night, I was the crown prince's favored choice for consort. After that night, I became a harlot who bedded a servant. For days afterward, a white silk cord lay on my bedroom table. I contemplated ending my life to spare my family's honor. It was the darkest hour of my life. Until that day, when Crown Prince Pei Yuan suddenly arrived with the imperial physician. He pushed open the door, letting in a long mist ray of sunlight that nearly blinded my tear-filled eyes. Pei Yuan asked me, "Young lady, did you see me that night?" Overwhelmed with shame, I kept my head bowed in reverence behind the layers of gauze curtains, mindful of the proper etiquette between sovereign and subject. "Your Highness is a golden branch and jade leaf. This humble maiden has never laid eyes upon you and dares not presume to recognize you." Through the gauze, I thought I heard the crown prince sigh softly, "Take care of yourself, young lady. A woman's virtue does not lie beneath her skirt. Do not demean yourself." The crown prince took the white silk from the table and left the imperial physician to tend to my health. At the time, I simply thought the crown prince was a kind soul. Later I learned that on that very night, the crown prince too had been drugged by treacherous hands, enduring a night of agony in that same alley. Upon hearing that the Shen family's daughter had been defiled in that same alley, he suspected it was his own lapse that had caused the wrongdoing. Thus he made a special visit to the Shen household, seeking an answer. He had heard of my distress that day on the street and had even brought along the imperial hospital's foremost expert in gynecology. Only after repeated verification did he finally learn it wasn't him that night. Now, I stare at the pile of firewood before me. The humiliation of my past life flashes vividly before my eyes. I can't recall the men's faces, but I remember clearly being pinned down on that pile of wood and violated. Before those 3 beggars and Duan Ming find me, I must leave this place immediately. The immortal's depravity was beyond cruel. My legs felt like jelly, my body a block of ice on the verge of melting. If any male appeared before me now, I feared I wouldn't be able to control myself. I pricked my left leg again, using the sharp pain to stimulate my body's reserves, and stumbled toward the source of that gasping breath. I'd expected it to be hard to find, but it turned out to be just a wall away. In the cold, pale moonlight, a man clad in elegant, luxurious robes leaned against the wall. His handsome face bore a faint blush, his fair neck tilted back in restless longing. He was my salvation. If I must lose something tonight, at least I'll choose what it is. This is my only chance to change my fate. Like a starving tiger pouncing on its prey, I threw myself into his arms. The last shred of clarity allowed me to discern the imperial dragon crest on his collar. I was utterly reassured. In the chaos, I fumbled open the door to a woodshed in the alley, seeking refuge from the beggars. Everything that followed unfolded naturally. His hands, with their sharply defined knuckles, held me tightly, and I surrendered myself, melting into a pool of desire under the drug's influence. We were like kindling saved from the flames, embracing each other, burning within each other's bodies. When I awoke again, a swath of muscle, marked with bite and scratch marks yet still strong and pale, filled my vision. As if possessed, my hand reached out and savored the feel of it. Unexpectedly, that muscle suddenly let out a terrified cry. "How dare you!" I snapped back to reality, lifting my gaze to find His Royal Highness the Crown Prince wearing an expression of horrified indignation, as if he'd been wronged. My reflexes were lightning fast. I immediately played the victim. "Who are you? What have you done to me?" The Crown Prince frowned. "You don't recognize me?" Cunning! We clearly met at the palace banquet. Of course I recognized the Crown Prince. In my previous life, it wasn't until long after our marriage that I learned, during the palace banquet before the concubine selection, Pei Yuan had cast 2 extra glances my way. It must have been precisely those 2 glances that drew Princess Huayan's attention to me. My mother once told me that immortal lust was a bedside potion tribute to the emperor from the western regions, used to train his consorts. Such a potion could only be obtained by a princess. The wine the princess bestowed upon me must have been tampered with. Duan Ming was merely a guard in my household. Without the princess's backing, who would dare to violate a noble lady at the foot of the imperial city? My greatest enemy likely lurks within the palace walls. Therefore, in this life, only by aligning myself with the Crown Prince's court do I stand a chance of survival. Last night, I successfully completed the first step. Now, I must dispel the Crown Prince's suspicions. At the palace banquet, I sat among the noble ladies in the lower seats, eyes perpetually lowered, daring not to offend the imperial family's majesty. Thus, even if I now denied recognizing the Crown Prince, it would be entirely plausible, and would make him believe I was utterly innocent and pure. "Who are you, you villain? How dare you impersonate the Crown Prince?" I curled up, wiping away tears as I wailed. "It's bad enough you bully me, but to do it in the Crown Prince's name. He's my favorite person in the world, and you've taken away every chance I had." My sobs were so wretched they nearly shook the roof off this wretched woodshed. Several tall guards burst in from outside, their attire marking them as Eastern Palace personnel. "Your Highness. We've finally found you." Pei Yuan stood flustered, overwhelmed by my tears. "Hey! Stop crying! I really am the Crown Prince. They can vouch for me." I threw a tantrum, shouting, "You're not. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is wise and mighty, how could he act like a dog gnawing on someone? His Royal Highness is noble and handsome, how could he look as lecherous as you? The Crown Prince is my peerless hero, how could he be a lecher like you?" The guards witnessed the Crown Prince, who had been furious moments before, slowly lift the corners of his mouth at these repeated cries of wise and valiant, handsome and noble, and peerless hero. "This is the Eastern Palace token." A gleaming gold medallion was held up before my tear-filled eyes. Pei Yuan's lips curled in suppressed amusement. "Do you believe me now?" The Eastern Palace guards chimed in. "This is the wise and mighty, graceful and handsome hero you spoke of, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince." My sobs stopped abruptly. I reached for the gold token, but Pei Yuan snatched his hand away, leaving my grasp empty. Then he suddenly took my pulse. Moments later, his brow furrowed deeply. "You were drugged too?" The Crown Prince was renowned for his martial prowess and mastery of medicine, having once saved an unnamed soldier on the battlefield and earned the people's praise for his benevolence. All I needed to do was let him take my pulse, then feign terror. "Does your Highness intend to kill me?" Pei Yuan released my wrist. With his medical skill, he would surely identify the drug. And that drug was most likely from the palace. He would realize I was just another pawn manipulated by the palace's powerful figures. At this point, I took another step back. "Your Highness, rest assured. Though this humble maiden admires you, I would never dare covet the Eastern Palace." I gathered my robes and rose stubbornly. "I will tell no one about last night's events. Your Highness need not trouble yourself." With that, I stumbled unsteadily out the door. The Crown Prince didn't even try to stop me, that bastard. I deliberately tore off my sleeve, letting a jade pendant fall before his eyes. That pendant bore the Shin family crest, and engraved upon it, my maiden name. I walked away without looking back. I couldn't let the crown prince see even a hint of lingering affection for him. Otherwise, I'd become nothing more than a cliched prey in his eyes. Stumbling out of the alley, my robe stained with blood, the wound on my leg throbbing faintly. At the end of the alley stood Duan Ming. When he found me, he was clearly overjoyed, immediately rushing toward me. Exhausted from blood loss and last night's ordeal, I collapsed into his arms without resistance. When I awoke, I lay in my bedroom at home. My father's face was ashen, my mother's eyes red from weeping. Duan Ming was slapping himself, declaring, "Last night, I saw the young lady afflicted by a love poison. Without yin-yang harmony, she would surely perish. That's why I lost my composure. I truly cherish you, young lady, and wish to protect you. If you have no objection, I humbly request to marry you as my lawful wife." Believing my memories were erased by the potion, he lied with righteous conviction. Weakly, I asked, "What did you say?" Duan Ming clasped my hand tightly and declared with certainty, "Have you forgotten, miss? Last night, you were poisoned by love. You threw yourself into my arms. I had no choice but to help you restore balance between yin and yang." His gaze lingered on me, sticky and intense, as if reminding me, or rather, warning me, "Miss, do you have a red mole on your right shoulder? Last night, in our embrace, I saw it clearly. Your graceful form is etched in my memory forever." Duan Ming knelt before my bed, slapping himself hard across the face while tears streamed down his face. He poured out his helplessness and discourtesy from last night, his regret and his affection. His self-reproach made it difficult for my parents to deal with him. The household physician in the room corroborated, the young lady was indeed afflicted by a strange love poison last night. If not promptly resolved, it would have caused her blood to reverse flow and led to her death. It was the same in my past life, the physician's testimony stood, while my own memories of that night remained utterly blank. My parents gritted their teeth in resignation. Therefore, Duan Ming truly saved your life. Merchants held lowly status. Even as the Shin family stood as the wealthiest imperial merchants, they remained second-class citizens in the world of prestige and fortune. My age was comparable to the crown prince's. My parents had meticulously groomed me, hoping one day I might be selected for the Eastern Palace and secure a promising future. All was destroyed last night, ruined by a mere gatekeeper. My father's hair turned white overnight. The next day, he went to the Eastern Palace to plead his case. I was already on the list of potential consorts. If this matter was not handled properly, it could be seen as a provocation against the Eastern Palace and a contempt for imperial authority. The East Palace showed no harsh blame. The Crown Prince himself came to our door, urging me not to take my own life but to live on. Duan Ming knelt in our courtyard for days, ostensibly repenting but truly forcing a marriage. A woman who loses her virtue loses control over her own life. In the end, bound by Duan Ming's debt of saving my life, I resigned myself to marrying into the Duan family. Though termed a marriage down, it was actually Duan Ming becoming a son-in-law. He moved into the Shin family mansion with his coarse mother. An overnight rise from servant to son-in-law granted him access to the opulence accumulated by 3 generations of imperial merchants in the Shin household. As the Shin family's only daughter, having forfeited my prospects in the Eastern Palace, my parents could only resign themselves to fate. They poured the Shin family's connections into advancing Duan Ming's official career. With mountains of gold and silver clearing his path, 3 years later, Duan Ming was finally awarded the title of 4th-rank Mingwei General for his achievements in suppressing bandits. He was never gifted with the talents of a scholar hero. This was the absolute limit of what the Shin family could propel him to. Parents who love their children plan for their long-term future. My parents only hoped he would treat me well. Yet on the very day Duan Ming achieved fame and fortune, those 3 beggars appeared. The moment they saw me, they bellowed, "We're the lovers she cheated with before marrying the general." Their foul-smelling mouths gaped, blackened teeth bared, as they shamelessly mocked me in public. I thought they were madmen causing trouble and asked Duan Ming to drive them away. But Duan Ming suddenly changed his expression and sneered maliciously, "Why send them away? They speak the truth. These 3 beggars are not only your mistress's lovers, but also the matchmakers between her and me. What did you say? That potion truly lived up to its reputation from the western regions. 3 years have passed, and my mistress remains completely unaware. In front of my parents, Duan Ming declared brazenly, "It wasn't me who defiled your daughter that night, it was these 3 beggars." He relished the memory, she was so fragrant and alluring then. If she hadn't been touched by those beggars, I might have found her tolerable enough to take. After all, who would ever know in that back alley? Father-in-law, mother-in-law, you truly believed I saved your daughter's life. Duan Ming shook the general's armor on his body, radiating authority. In truth, I merely picked up the young lady's corpse that morning. Yet you allowed such a noble lady to marry me, granting me this wealth, honor, and splendid future. Upon learning the truth of those events, father suffered a fatal stroke and collapsed, spitting blood. Mother attempted to take her own life alongside Duan Ming, but he shoved her against the table corner, her head smashing open in a bloody gash. Chilled to the bone, I drew my hairpin to join Duan Ming in death, only for him to kick me off the high platform. I crashed to the ground, my body covered in blood. As death approached, I saw those 3 beggars closing in around me. Memories of that night flashed before my eyes like a revolving lantern. Under cover of darkness, they gnawed at my flesh, in the mist, they drenched my body. I screamed and wailed, nearly breaking down. Duan Ming embraced his mistress, whom he'd kept hidden outside, watching coldly. That day, Duan Ming told the world he'd returned from suppressing bandits only to discover his wife in an affair with beggars. When the scandal broke, his wife went mad and killed her own parents, prompting Duan Ming to accidentally kill me. With the imperial court decaying, internal and external troubles mounting, and the prefectural office in decline, no one questioned this absurd lie. Thus, Duan Ming secured both an official post and rightfully claimed the wealth accumulated by 3 generations of the Shin family. Cradling his young sweetheart, accompanied by his old mother, he stepped over my corpse and replaced the Shin family's plaque with Duan residence. He became the new master of the Shin household. Everything from my past life remains vividly etched in my memory, now replaying itself after my rebirth. Now, as my mother heeded the court physician's words, she pleaded with me through tears, just as she had in my previous life. "Jingji, things have come to this. You cannot blame Duan Ming. Accept your fate. The rumors are already spreading through the streets." Father's expression grew grave. "Marry Duan Ming. Claim you were betrothed long ago. At least it would be legitimate. I'll go apologize to the Eastern Palace. The Crown Prince is benevolent, surely he won't be harsh. If not, it will be as if you." Before the imperial selection, father gritted his teeth. "Had an illicit affair with a guard. That violates propriety, insults the Eastern Palace, and shows contempt for the heir apparent, a treasonous crime deserving of extermination of 9 clans. Father and mother didn't know that the one who committed adultery with me last night was none other than His Highness the Crown Prince of the Eastern Palace." Duan Ming thought victory was his for the taking. His eyes gleamed with greed as he grabbed my hand. "Miss, for the sake of your entire clan, you must endure this hardship and marry me." My parents' words were entirely reasonable. Duan Ming, or rather, the mastermind behind the scheme, was certain the Shin family would swallow their pride for the greater good. Duan Ming was confident, yet he still feigned humility. "Miss, it truly was an unintentional mistake. If you're angry, strike me down with your blade, I won't resist." Staring at Duan Ming's hypocritical facade, I suddenly smiled softly. "Guard Duan, the doctor said you saved my life. How could I bear to kill my savior?" I raised my hand, brushing against Duan Ming's cheek, and cooed softly, "But Duan Lang, you hurt me last night. I must punish you with a few strokes of the rod. Do you accept?" My beauty was unmatched in the capital. Duan Ming was utterly captivated by these few tender words, nodding vigorously. "I willingly accept the punishment, as long as the young lady is appeased." He thought this was just a damsel's petty temper. Having taken such advantage, enduring a harmless bit of suffering to appease his beauty was a pleasure he'd gladly accept. My parents didn't interfere. Duan Ming was led into the courtyard, where he lay on his back, his limbs bound by other guards. He found it strange. Wasn't it supposed to be a beating? Why am I lying like this? Supporting my aching waist and legs, I walked to his side. Tapping Duan Ming's cheek with the flat of my dagger, my voice remained gentle, because I intend to teach young Master Duan a lesson myself. Duan Ming mistook it for flirtation and even smiled foolishly. Soon, he would find nothing to smile about. My blade slid from his face, tracing his Adam's apple, across his chest, down to his abdomen. Finally, it came to rest on the slight bulge between his legs. Duan Ming panicked. "Miss, what are you doing? Didn't you just say you'd gladly take a knife to the gut?" A cold smile twisted my lips. Suddenly, my blade rose and fell between his legs. Blood spattered everywhere. A piercing, agonized scream echoed across the Shin Manor grounds. Moments later, a man and a grotesque mass of blood and flesh were flung out the mansion's gate. Blood gushed from the man's crotch as he writhed on the ground, writhing in agony. A sharp-eyed passerby remarked, "Ooh, a fresh eunuch." I stepped outside and addressed the gawking crowd. "This guard dog dared to bite the master's honor. This is his fate." Duan Ming's face drained of color from the agony. He glared at me with hatred. You filthy whore who's defiled your own body." I twirled the knife that had castrated him, then tossed it contemptuously onto the ground. "You're the filthy thing." I had severed Duan Ming's manhood with a single stroke. Of course, that single cut could have ended his life outright. But if he died, how would I lure out the mastermind? Among the onlookers, someone looked unsettled and hurried away, likely to send word. Sure enough, within an hour, a maid reported, Duan Ming was dragged away. Only a pool of blood remains. Over the next few days, the capital buzzed with rumors. Some claimed the Shin family's heiress had been drugged and defiled by the gatekeeper, driving her to castrate him in public out of rage and shame. Others whispered she betrayed him after an illicit affair, then discarded him like a used tool. Amidst the swirling rumors, one refrain echoed relentlessly, "Regardless, that Shin heiress has lost her virtue. She deserves a white silk noose to restore the family's honor." Others praised, "That guard surnamed Duan is truly a role model for us." A lowly gatekeeper got to taste the only daughter of the wealthiest imperial merchant. Even castrated, he still came out ahead. My parents had explicitly forbidden servants from gossiping in my presence, yet these rumors still reached my ears. The eldest clan elder of the Shin family even sent a piece of white silk to me personally, its meaning needing no explanation. I stared at that 3-foot length of white silk. In my past life, I had truly contemplated ending it all. But my parents had only me. They loved and protected me, planning for my future with such foresight. I couldn't bear to leave them to grow old alone and miserable. In the end, I swallowed my pride and married down, only to bring ruin upon my entire family. This time, I personally placed that white silk into a chest. The one who should be hanged is someone else. Everyone assumed I wouldn't survive, but I cooperated fully with the physician, nurturing my body. Compared to the shattered state of my body in my previous life, this time only the wound I inflicted on my own leg was severe. After examining my pulse, the physician discreetly advised me against indulging in carnal desires. The true cruelty of the immortal's lust potion lay in its aftermath. A single bout could drain tenfold the vital essence of its victim, leaving them weakened for months. Yet the medicine the physician prescribed restored my chi and blood within 3 days. One day, curiosity prompted me to lift a corner of the gauze curtain. Only then did I recognize that the one tending to my health was no ordinary physician, but Li Changyu, the renowned gynecologist and master physician of the Imperial Medical Academy. As the foremost female physician, Li Changyu attended only to the nobility within the palace. In both past and present lives, the only one who could summon Physician Li was the Crown Prince, Pei Yuan. "Did the Crown Prince send you?" Dr. Li did not deny it. "His Highness asked that you take good care of yourself." Since she was an acquaintance, I pulled back the gauze curtain completely. Seeing my refreshed and clear-eyed state, Dr. Li smiled with relief. "The Crown Prince sent me because he feared you might seek death. Now, seeing your rosy, plump complexion, I know you've overcome that hurdle." I replied calmly, "Chastity is merely a shackle imposed by society. What I must do is break free from this shackle, not add another length of white silk to bind myself further." Dr. Li remarked, "Your perspective is admirable. How tragic that young Miss Lin, abducted by bandits for a single night, returned home only to hang herself. When I arrived, the villagers were cursing her." I frowned. What were they cursing? They cursed her for dying too late. They said she should have hanged herself immediately after the humiliation, not waited until she returned to the Lin residence. A 17-year-old girl, already unfortunate in life, only to be cursed by her own kin after death, dying at home, she has sullied the Lin family's honor and dignity. Li Changyu sighed deeply, her eyes brimming with pity and regret, tinged with self-reproach for arriving too late. In my past life, it was Li Changyu who healed my broken body. She had even hinted delicately that such injuries didn't seem like the work of a single person. Back then, blinded by Duan Ming, I hadn't dared to think deeply about it. Li Changyu likely feared I might follow Miss Lin's path to death, so she dared not reveal the full truth. After the dressing change, I grabbed Li Changyu's arm and demanded, "Did His Royal Highness the Crown Prince say anything?" "He only instructed you to focus on your recovery. Nothing else." I curled my lip, that bastard. The timing of my rebirth felt too calculated, as if heaven itself was toying with me once more. Framing the Crown Prince that night was my only option. The situation was too dire, half my gamble rested on him. Li Changyu countered, "Is there anything you wish me to convey to His Highness? If that's the case, then I have nothing to say." I knew a thing or two about playing hard to get. Li Changyu smiled. "I'll deliver your words to the Crown Prince." After the imperial physician left, Mother came in to see me again. She couldn't help but ask once more, "Jir, tell your mother, who was it that night?" "Mother, it's true someone took my virginity, but it absolutely wasn't Duan Ming." "Then who was it?" "You refuse to say who drugged you, who defiled you." "Jir, things have come to this. You must tell your father and mother so we can find a way to save you." No sooner had Mother finished speaking than a maid stumbled in, breathless, "Madam. Miss. Trouble. Princess Huayin has arrived at the estate, and Duan Ming has returned with her." I gripped my mother's wrist tightly. "Mother, you'll soon know all the answers. That man will come forward today to claim responsibility." That this matter reached the palace didn't surprise me in the least. Losing one's virtue before the imperial selection ceremony was tantamount to provoking the royal family and showing contempt for the crown prince. Thus, Princess Huayin using this pretext to demand accountability from the Shen family was entirely reasonable. The princess sat regally upon the imperial carriage while the Shen household knelt in greeting. "Rise." Only after those two words fell did I dare rise and lift my gaze toward the princess. This was my second encounter with Princess Huayin. 10 days prior, at the palace banquet, the princess had bestowed upon me a cup of fine wine. As I thanked her, I had caught my first glimpse of her in haste. Now I studied her closely. She was 30 years old. Princesses of the Great Qi Empire were often betrothed to ministers or married off to distant realms for political alliances, their marriages typically arranged before their 20s. Yet Princess Huayin remained unmarried at this age. Emperor Yuanda showed no urgency, routinely ignoring memorials urging her marriage. The princess possessed a beauty beyond compare. Clad in brocade robes, adorned with gold and jade, she leaned against the imperial palanquin like a wilted peony, weary of the world. Duan Ming, recently castrated, hunched his back and shrieked in a high-pitched voice, "Princess." Before Shen Qingji's selection as a consort, she met me secretly in an alleyway for illicit affairs. After the affair was exposed, she poisoned me. She seeks to climb the social ladder by deceiving the crown prince and the emperor. Execute her entire clan. Vindicate me. A man deprived of that organ inevitably becomes twisted. He had no time left to feign affection, he only wanted to kill me immediately. The princess raised her eyes. "Shen Qingji, do you know your crime?" I countered, "I was drugged and framed." "I am also a victim. May I ask, princess, what crime have I committed?" The princess showed no remorse. To her, I was but an insect. Even if she drove me to death, she would find it amusing, a mere game. I care not for the intricate details. The fact that you consorted with a man before the selection of consorts is an indisputable truth. For this alone, this princess can sentence you to death. With a wave of her hand, 2 palace maids stepped forward, one bearing a length of crimson wedding silk, the other a length of stark white silk. "You have 2 paths, either accept your fate and marry Duan Ming. I shall personally preside over your wedding. Or hang yourself by the neck to preserve your virtue and dignity." My parents knelt, begging for mercy. Princess, have mercy. Duan Ming is now a eunuch, how can he possibly marry? What's wrong with being a eunuch? The princess smiled, her expression both innocent and cruel. A eunuch can still be a husband. It's just that the pleasures of the bedchamber will be lacking. Miss Shen will have to endure that hardship. With the princess backing him, Duan Ming grew smug. I became a eunuch because of you. Xin Qingji, you severed my line of descendants. For the rest of my life, it's your turn to serve me. I will not marry. I protested with unwavering resolve. Duan Ming's indenture contract remains in the Shen family's possession. Daqi law stipulates that masters may punish servants for wrongdoing at their own discretion. For grave offenses, no court intervention is required. Execution by beating may be carried out within the household. Should Duan Ming dare set foot in the Shen residence, even with your princess's household as guarantor, I shall ensure he dies without a proper burial. Xin Qingji, you dare defy this princess's command? This humble maiden dares not. I merely remind your highness that the laws of Daqi were established by our ancestral rulers. Your highness should not defy the will of our forebears, lest you invite censure. Hua Yin straightened her upper body, her radiant face finally showing a hint of anger. Suddenly, she laughed. What a sharp tongue you have. Since you refuse to marry, then choose the second path. That white silk ribbon was held up before my eyes. You yourself admitted that night you lost your virtue. According to Daqi law, a court lady who loses her virtue before selection is considered to have disgraced the imperial family. Father the emperor himself declared that a woman who loses her virtue must take her own life with white silk to demonstrate her chastity. This was originally merely a private punishment. Yet when Emperor Yuanda ascended the throne, he elevated such private punishments into ironclad law. In the eyes of those in power, a woman's loss of chastity was deemed as heinous as murder or arson. I countered the princess with the law, but she crushed me with it. Moreover, you met with your lover in secret, your crime is compounded. Multiple offenses warrant cumulative punishment. This princess grants you a length of white silk to preserve your body intact. Duan Ming, escort your young mistress on her final journey. Duan Ming seized his chance for vengeance, yanking the silk's ends as he closed in step by step. My parents knelt begging the princess for mercy, but guards pinned them to the ground. I tried to dodge, but two burly maids held my arms behind my back. One grabbed my hair, forcing my head back to await the white silk. How lofty you are, young lady. Yet here you are, in my grasp. Duan Ming gripped the silk, his gaze dark and vicious. If I don't snap your neck, I'll change my surname. At the critical moment, I screamed, you can't kill me. I'm pregnant. Princess Huayin seemed struck to the core by these words, bursting into laughter, yet her eyes blazed with even greater malice. So what if you're pregnant? Do you think this princess would spare you for the sake of 2 lives? Having a bastard makes you even more deserving of death. The child in my womb is no bastard, it is royal blood. What? Didn't you want to know who took me that night, princess? I declared loudly under her gaze. The one who shared that night with me was His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. The heir to the throne, Pei Yuan. Everyone froze in shock, my parents' mouths agape. Duan Ming panicked. This woman is mad. How dare she slander the Crown Prince? It was me that night, it was me. I met the princess's stunned gaze and confronted her. How convenient that His Highness the Crown Prince also fell victim to drugged alleyways that night. You should know best, princess. The princess paled, she was the one who administered the drugs, of course she knew best. I roared at the 2 matrons, I carry royal offspring within me. Who dares lay a hand on me? The matrons, terrified, loosened their grip. I seized the moment to break free from their hold. My demeanor was fierce, though my heart trembled within. Of course, I wasn't pregnant. This was merely a desperate delaying tactic. This lie was so fragile, a moment's thought would reveal its fatal flaw. What I hadn't anticipated was that it wasn't the seasoned wet nurses who saw through it, but the unmarried Princess Huayin. Xin Qingji, this happened barely 10 days ago. How could you possibly be pregnant already? Someone, take her pulse and see if it's true. The imperial physician accompanying the princess stepped forward and leaned close to me. Miss Shen, please extend your hand. I clenched my palm tightly beneath my sleeve. The physician urged, whether you are pregnant or not, I can tell by feeling your pulse. Miss Shin, please extend your hand. Why won't you extend your hand? You're guilty. Duan Ming pressed closer, step by step. I told you, Shin Qingji is mad with desire to become crown princess. She even imagines she's carrying the crown prince's child. Ridiculous. This madwoman. Strangle her now. The physician urged again, Miss Shin, please extend your hand. The moment the physician touched my pulse, this lie would be exposed. My cards were all played. I scanned the doorway, but that figure never appeared. Please roll up your sleeve yourself. Resigned, I lowered my head and rolled up my right sleeve, exposing the veins beneath my skin to the faintly chilly breeze. Suddenly, a pair of warm hands seized my wrist. My body jolted, certain the lie would be exposed, but instead I heard a smooth voice chuckle, "You really are pregnant." I snapped my head up, expecting to find some quack doctor, only to meet the handsome, commanding face of Pei Yuan. His large hand was tightly wrapped around my wrist. The imperial physician had long been left behind by the crown prince. The Shin residence, once surrounded by the princess's people, was now filled with guards from the eastern palace. Pei Yuan felt my pulse, his smile unrestrained and exuberant. Quite the talent you have, Shin Jiji. Jiji, my childhood nickname. Cold sweat ran down my back. A sudden wave of relief washed over me as I gritted my teeth in silent curses. What perfect timing, you dog of a crown prince. Pei Yuan could clearly see I wasn't pregnant. His hand moved from my pulse to my wrist, then to my palm. His long fingers forcefully slipped between mine, interlocking our fingers. He then raised my hand high before Princess Huayin. It was I who met Shin Qingji after drinking that night. Shin Qingji truly carries my child. Pei Yuan declared with unrestrained boldness, should my imperial sister have any objections, let her seal a memorial with the princess's official seal and deliver it to the Eastern Palace. I shall review it when I find the time. As the legitimate heir born to the Empress, Pei Yuan possessed not only legitimate and noble lineage but also remarkable achievements. At 15, he led troops to quell the northern barbarian threat, reclaiming 13 cities for the Great Qi. At 17, he presided over the cabinet, purging corruption throughout the court and the realm. Now, having served as regent for 3 years, he held absolute power. All hailed Pei Yuan as Daqi's future and the people's savior. Princess Huayin's birth mother, however, was merely a dancer favored by the emperor during his imperial tour. Huayin herself was only acknowledged and brought back to the palace at the age of 5. With no maternal clan to rely on, even the emperor's obvious favoritism toward this daughter could not bridge the vast disparity in status. With such a vast disparity in status, should Princess Huayin have matters to address, she must indeed first submit a memorial to the Eastern Palace, then await the Crown Prince's disposition. She could resort to underhanded tactics privately, but in a direct confrontation, the princess would naturally be at a disadvantage. Princess Huayin's expression was utterly priceless. My royal brother, such reckless behavior is utterly unacceptable by the standards of propriety. The Crown Prince delivered his final verdict. Shin Qingji was always among the candidates for Crown Princess. My nighttime meeting with her was entirely legitimate. If my royal sister wishes to complain to our father, then I shall have it thoroughly investigated. Where exactly did the wine served at the palace banquet go wrong, that it caused both me and Miss Shin to lose our composure? These words, both explicit and implicit, were tantamount to tearing off the mask and exposing the princess's underhanded schemes. In recent days, the Crown Prince had undoubtedly uncovered much. The princess, feeling guilty, immediately lost her nerve. Duan Ming, however, refused to accept defeat and went to complain to the Crown Prince, "Your Highness, do not let Shin Qingji deceive you." That night, even if it wasn't me who touched her, it must have been 3 beggars. Duan Ming's words froze in his throat as a long sword suddenly pierced his throat. The strike was ruthless and fierce, unleashing a chilling blade aura. Duan Ming's eyes bulged wide, his pupils rolling downward in terror as he saw his own neck nearly severed by the thrust. Blood spattered everywhere, and the crowd screamed in horror. Even the princess was so terrified she tumbled from her palanquin. The Crown Prince drew the sword, stepped over Duan Ming's corpse, and coldly wiped the blood from the blade. He raised his eyes to warn the princess, "My choice of consort is none of your Imperial Highness's concern. Otherwise, be warned, the sword knows no mercy." The splendor with which the princess entered the Shin residence was matched only by the disgrace with which she departed. The bearers of her palanquin, still shaken, nearly stumbled over the threshold. The princess fled in near panic. Duan Ming's corpse lay at my feet, yet my legs felt as if lead had been poured into them, unable to move. Pei Yuan kicked the filthy thing aside for me, then calmly reassured my parents, "Fear not. He is thoroughly dead." Parents. We're not afraid of the dead, we're afraid of you, Your Highness. Pei Yuan turned to me, "Stop pretending. Just now, I distinctly heard you cursing me. What was that about a dog prince?" Your Highness must have misheard, haha. I tried to bluff my way out, but he grabbed me by the collar and yanked me back. Pregnant? Why were you wandering around? I just made that up. Ah, you fabricated being pregnant with the crown prince's child? That's treason, punishable by execution of your entire clan. I snapped, "You came too late. I had no other choice." I delayed deliberately. The crown prince suddenly produced the jade pendant engraved with my name. "You think you can play games of feigned disinterest before me? Do you believe I can't see through it?" My heart sank. That night in the alley, I could have controlled myself. It was your sudden, hungry tiger-like pounce that threw off my breath and made me lose control. Afterwards, you had the nerve to play the victim, claiming you dared not associate with the Eastern Palace, yet you tossed this jade pendant, as if desperate for me to find you. So clumsy, so contrived. Shinjiji, have you never seduced a man before? Every trick I'd played was laid bare. No wonder he'd ignored me these past days. He'd been testing how far I could go on my own. So, Your Highness intends to kill me? Killing you would be too boring. The concubine selection is in 3 days. You must attend. I froze. I'd set the bait, and the fish had seen through my scheme, yet still took the hook. Why? I'd schemed so thoroughly against him, yet he truly held no grudge. Had it not been you that night, it would have been the princess's men who pounced. Better you, Shinjiji, than anyone else. Besides, the crown prince chuckled softly, leaning close to whisper in my ear, "Miss Shin, do you recall that night when you clung tightly to my arm, crying out, 'My savior, my savior'?" As he drew near, I first caught the sharp scent of sandalwood. My ears burned, cheeks flushed, and I composed myself to admit, had it not been for Your Highness that night, I would have been living a death worse than death. I spoke sincerely, Your Highness truly was my savior. Miss Shin, I often have the same dream. Pei Yuan said, "In that dream, you are my savior." He handed me an Eastern Palace token, then turned casually and said, "Remember to come for the selection of consorts. We must go through the motions to formally recognize you." I looked down at the pure gold token. Beyond the Eastern Palace's cloud pattern, it bore the characters Zhao Lin. That was Pei Yuan's calligraphy. The world affectionately called him the Prince of Zhao Lin, symbolizing the sun's radiance descending upon Dachi. He was the savior and enlightened ruler upon whom all of Dachi pinned their hopes. Yet in my past life, such a man was driven to suicide by Princess Huayin. I still remember that cold, rainy night from my past life. Duan Ming had gone out to suppress bandits, and I went to the temple to pray for his safety. When I left in the morning, all was calm. By the time I returned to the city, a palace coup had erupted. That coup was instigated by Princess Huayin. By the time I reached the city, the coup was nearing its end. The defeated rebels took me hostage, and Crown Prince Zhaolin ordered the imperial guards to hold their fire. Princess Huayin laughed, "For the sake of an insignificant noblewoman, you show such mercy. No wonder everyone says that when you ascend the throne, Daki will usher in a century of prosperity. What a pity, my brother Zhaolin, you won't live much longer." Under the moonlight, I caught sight of Crown Prince Zhaolin. Separated by the gauze curtain, it had been 3 years since I last saw the crown prince. 3 years had aged the once spirited crown prince, his face weathered and streaked with white hair. 3 years prior, the crown prince had also been poisoned in an alley. His selection of a consort followed swiftly, taking merely a day to choose Lady Lin, the adopted daughter of the duke. Rumors spread through the streets that Lady Lin had saved him from the love potion that poisoned him in that alley that night. Out of gratitude and concern for Lady Lin's reputation, the position of crown princess naturally fell to her. After their marriage, Lady Lin bore the crown prince a son and a daughter, but both children died painfully at the age of 1. The imperial physicians attributed it to congenital weakness. It was said the crown prince loved those two children deeply. The loss of children at 1 year old cut far deeper and caused far greater pain than the loss of a child who died in the womb. After that, the crown prince's health began to decline. The physicians could find no cause, attributing it to excessive grief. His body grew weaker day by day. Yet a year ago, he still managed to drag his sickly frame to the northern frontier, driving back the invading Baidan forces. That triumphant return left the crown prince's hair streaked with white. As the crown prince's strength waned, Princess Huayin rapidly expanded her influence within the court. She finally chose this rainy night, when the emperor lay gravely ill, to launch her palace coup. She still failed. In the darkness, Crown Prince Zhaolin shot an arrow through the forehead of the rebel soldier holding me hostage. He rescued me, but I had no chance to express my gratitude. Princess Consort Lin arrived, kneeling to beg the crown prince to spare the princess. The princess appeared to surrender, yet spoke a single sentence to the crown prince in the rain. That night was too chaotic. Though I clearly heard those words, I cannot recall them now. They were likely a provocation, a threat. The crown prince's face suddenly turned deathly pale. He violently coughed up a mouthful of dark blood, swaying as if about to collapse. Both the princess and Lady Lin were led away. I stepped forward to support the crown prince. He only looked at me, his eyes filled with sorrow and despair, murmuring, "That spring banquet. We met then." My heart trembled. As I tried to draw nearer, he pushed me away with a wave of his hand. He handed me an umbrella, telling me to return to my residence and not to look back. The rain suddenly intensified, and a slash of sword energy sliced through my hair. I spun around, my pupils contracting sharply. Crown Prince Zhaolin had slashed his own throat. Blood mingled with rain, splattering onto the soil of Daki. That night, the people of Daki lost their hope. Afterwards, Crown Princess Lin also poisoned herself to death, while Princess Huayin laughed wildly as she plunged from the city ramparts. Emperor Yuanda, overcome by grief, passed away shortly after. The throne passed to Prince Cheng, a man of mediocre virtue and talent. Even maintaining the status quo proved difficult for Prince Cheng. Daki thus began its decline. Half a year later, tragedy struck my family, yet no official came to investigate. Not long after my death, Daki, now bereft of Crown Prince Zhaolin, fell to a joint invasion by the Northern Di and Northern Dan tribes. Thus, a dynasty began its descent into ruin and extinction. Now, I trace the engraved characters Zhaolin on the Eastern Palace token, gazing at Pei Zhaolin's vibrant, upright silhouette in the sunlight. In my past life, I knew the Crown Prince was a good man. So after rebirth, I despicably framed him and exploited him. I believed he remained unaware, even smug in my deceit. Now I see he was merely merciful. He guessed my schemes yet still intervened to save me at critical moments. He sensed my dead end and paved a path for my survival. He understood the world's cruelty toward women, so he preserved my dignity, ensuring my rightful standing. This life, my fate may have been altered, but what of Pei Zhaolin? What did Princess Huayin say to him that drove such a man to despair, to the point of slitting his own throat? Why did he fall gravely ill? Why did his hair turn white? Why did he take his own life with a sword? This lifetime, my fate is bound to the Crown Prince. I absolutely cannot let him repeat the same mistakes. I caught up to the Crown Prince. "Your Highness, if you trust me, send someone to investigate the dealings between Princess Huayin and the Duke's residence over these past years. My Shin family's connections cannot reach the princess's residence or the Duke's mansion, but the Eastern Palace can. I only need to point him in a clear direction." The Crown Prince seemed to want to ask me why. I told him directly, the Crown Princess is the future Empress. The Empress's offspring will be the future ruler. The princess interfered in your Highness's selection of a consort for the sake of that imperial throne. The Duke's mansion is the only power behind the princess. It was the Duke's household that secured Princess Huayin's return to the palace all those years ago. In my previous life, it was by winning over the Duke's household that the princess orchestrated that palace coup. The Crown Prince suddenly understood. "Did you know I would come today?" I told him frankly, "Your Highness is a clever man. You would inevitably uncover that the incident in the alley that night was the princess's doing. I believed you would descend like a divine soldier to rescue me." I declared with unwavering certainty, "Because we share a common enemy and common interests." Pei Yuan pinched my earlobe and chided me with a soft laugh, "You little fox." Duan Ming was dead, the crown prince had personally dealt with him. Public opinion on the streets shifted abruptly, now buzzing with tales of my destined union with the crown prince. Duan Ming became a villain reviled by all, branded a treacherous dog. My reputation restored, the entire Daki realm tacitly acknowledged me as the crown prince's intended consort, a mere formality remained. On the day of the selection, Mother dressed me with meticulous care. Her usual worry vanished, replaced by a beaming smile. She praised my good fortune, saying I always turned misfortune into blessing. The crown prince is a man worthy of trust. I'm so happy for you, my dear. Your father hasn't stopped smiling these past few days. I gazed at my reflection in the mirror, yet an inexplicable unease settled in my heart. This unease was confirmed on my way to the Eastern Palace. Crowds on the street were rushing toward the city gate, shouting that the Lin family's daughter was about to leap from the ramparts. I dismounted from my sedan chair and hurried over. There, dressed in her wedding robes atop the city gate, stood Lin Nanshu, the crown prince's consort from my past life, now the daughter of the duke's household, shouting her accusation. That night, it was me. I was the one who cured his highness of the love poison. The Shin family's daughter was an impostor. This was the very Lin family daughter who had married into the Eastern Palace in my previous life, using the alleyway incident as her pretext. That rainy night, when the princess's rebellion failed, Lin Nanshu knelt to beg for the princess's mercy, proof they were allies from the start. Everything became crystal clear. At that palace banquet, the princess decided to eliminate me entirely because the crown prince had spared me a glance. She poisoned my wine, had beggars defile me, then had guards impersonate me, all to ruin my reputation and force me into a lowly marriage. More crucially, it severed the crown prince's affection for me, clearing the path for Lin Nanshu to become crown princess. The princess's plan was flawless, until I disrupted it this lifetime. This current scene is merely a desperate act of a cornered beast. Lin Nanshu, clad in bridal robes, stood atop the most conspicuous city tower, adopting a pitiful, victimized posture. Shinqingji is an impostor. The crown princess should be me. Having lost my virtue, I can only prove my resolve through death. Princess Huayin would not spare me, nor would she spare Pei Yuan. This apparent open attack by the Lin family was, in truth, a hidden arrow aimed at the Eastern Palace. The moment I appeared, I became the focal point of the crowd. Lin Nanshu stood on the city gate tower, looking down at me. She appeared ready to take her own life, yet her hand beneath her sleeve clutched the corner of the city wall tightly. Death was a pretense, her true aim was to escalate the situation and force the East Palace to yield. Since you claim I'm an impostor, Miss Lin, let me ask you, did you clearly see the arrow wound on His Highness's right chest that night? Lin Nanshu declared, "Of course I saw it clearly. That wound ran deep. It was heartbreaking." An Eastern Palace guard who had rushed over loudly countered, "The prince has no arrow wound on his right chest, it's on his left, over his heart." Without hesitation, Lin Nanshu amended her statement, "Right, there was a wound over his heart. It was too dark, I remembered wrong." I scoffed. How could anyone survive an arrow to the heart? Do you think His Highness the Crown Prince is made of iron? Miss Lin, as the daughter of a duke, why would you disregard your reputation and openly lie? A wave of laughter erupted below. Lin Nanshu flushed with embarrassment and scolded me, "Shinqingji, you truly are a merchant's daughter, vulgar and unrefined. How dare you joke about His Highness the Crown Prince's private affairs? Miss Lin, perhaps you should first consider what crime you've committed by publicly slandering the Crown Prince." Taking advantage of Lin Nanshu's disarray, guards from the Eastern Palace rushed forward and rescued her from the city wall. A eunuch arrived with the imperial guards, delivering the emperor's decree. Lin Nanshu was to explain herself before His Majesty. Lin Nanshu and I arrived together at the Eastern Palace. Emperor Yuanda sat upon the main throne, Princess Huayin already present. The assembled candidates for the Crown Prince's consort stood in 2 rows on either side. Pei Yuan's lips curved slightly when he saw me approach. After the formal bows, Princess Huayin asked with apparent warmth, "Miss Lin, why did you attempt suicide in bridal attire on the day of the Crown Prince's consort selection? Have you suffered some injustice? Speak, and His Majesty will see justice done." Lin Nanshu spoke through tears, "Your Majesty, please see clearly. That night at the palace banquet, it was truly me and His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. As if suffering the greatest injustice, she cried out, "Shinqingshi is an impostor. She deceived everyone. Your Majesty," I stepped forward, "the one who slandered this humble maiden was a Shin family guard. That man was personally executed by His Royal Highness the Crown Prince." Princess Huayin sneered, "Certainly not a guard, but someone far more despicable. Bring forth the Lin family's witnesses." Guards escorted 3 beggars before the emperor. The moment they appeared, a foul stench assaulted my nostrils, instantly dragging me back to that filthy night in my past life. My stomach churned violently, my hands trembling uncontrollably. I struggled like a drowning person, only regaining my composure when I pinched my palms raw. I forced myself to stare directly at this filthy, vile group. I fought to suppress my nausea, repeatedly reminding myself that this was the pain of a past life. I had avoided it, and that I was free now. But Lin Nanshua reacted even more violently than I did. She turned her head and vomited, her face looking even paler than mine. Those 3 beggars were targeting me. "Miss Shin, have you truly forgotten how ecstatic that night in the alley was? Did the 3 of us serve you well? Who knew you still had the strength to run off to the Crown Prince? Did you find us beggars unsatisfactory?" Their words were pure humiliation and false accusations against me. When 3 men unanimously slander a woman's virtue, even the most absurd lies become undeniable truths in the eyes of the world. Pei Yuan roared with fury, "How dare you act so brazenly in the Eastern Palace?" I restrained the enraged Crown Prince, fixing my gaze on one beggar whose limbs were covered in sores. I asked Pei Yuan, "Your Highness, you are well versed in medical knowledge. Do you know what kind of rash that beggar has on his hands?" Shocked by my composure, Pei Yuan reluctantly answered under my inquiring gaze, "It's syphilis. Contagious. Meaning intimate contact would cause identical lesions to appear." I casually rolled up my sleeve, revealing flawless, snow-white skin. Such irrefutable proof silenced all arguments. The crowd no longer doubted me, instead hurling insults at my vulgarity, a merchant's daughter. Truly beneath any respectable company. If I'd lingered over such trivialities, I might have been wrongfully condemned. I turned my attention to Lin Nanshu. "Miss Lin, you insist you were in that alley that night. We already proved your lie on the city wall. Now your false accusation against me is exposed. With lies pouring from your mouth, surely you aren't the one trying to frame the Eastern Palace?" Lin Nanshu retreated a step, her guilt evident. Her wedding gown was thick, sleeves covering her palms, collar pulled high. The more she hid, the more suspicious she became. I suddenly grabbed Lin Nanshu's arm. "Dare you roll up your sleeves like me to prove your innocence?" Standing slightly taller than her, I could now see scattered red rashes beneath the collar that had concealed her neck. The emperor, losing patience, ordered 2 palace maids to restrain Lin Nanshu. They forcibly rolled up her layered sleeves, revealing a horrifying patch of red rash identical to that on the beggar's body. In this lifetime, the one defiled by the beggar had become Lin Nanshu. That night, I seized Pei Yuan and hid him in the woodshed. The beggars failed to find me but instead encountered Lin Nanshu, who had come seeking the crown prince as planned. Once these desperate men were consumed by lust, even invoking princesses or dukes would be useless. When I saw Lin Nanshu retching at the sight of the beggars, I began to suspect. Later, seeing her clutching her collar and sleeves tightly, I knew for certain. In my past life, I too had been infected with this rash. After our marriage, Duan Ming even humiliated me, calling it a filthy disease. The truth was now clear. Lin Nanshua frantically clutched her sleeves. Under the subtle stares of the crowd, she approached Princess Huayin, her face a mask of embarrassment and desperation. "Princess. You orchestrated all this. You must vindicate me." But the princess kicked her away with disgust. "Slandering the crown prince wasn't enough, now you dare slander this princess. How heartless Princess Huayin is to her own flesh and blood." At these words, even the emperor's expression abruptly changed. Lin Nanshu suddenly turned to me. "What did you say? Miss Lin, haven't you noticed how strikingly similar your features are to the princess's? 15 years ago, the duke's household brought back a baby girl from their suburban villa. During that time, Princess Huayin was convalescing at that very villa. This was the sole piece of intelligence uncovered by the Eastern Palace. Truthfully, it was all merely my conjecture. Lin Nanshu was 18 this year, while Princess Huayin was only 30. There was no way they could be mother and daughter. I merely wished to stir greater chaos. But then, Emperor Yuanda, seated upon his throne, suddenly erupted in fury. Huayin, how dare you meddle in the Eastern Palace's selection of consorts? Your audacity knows no bounds. Guards! Immediately confine both the princess and Lin Nanshu to house arrest. Father, what are you hiding? As if a seal had been torn open, the princess suddenly declared loudly before everyone, yes. Lin Nanshu is my biological daughter. And guess who her biological father is? It was as if she'd been suppressed for far too long. The slightest mention had pushed her over the edge, and she was now determined to expose everything, driven by a desperate, reckless fury. The princess fixed her gaze on the emperor seated before her. 18 years have passed. Have you forgotten everything, father? Her words jolted me awake. Not only did Lin Nanshu resemble the princess, but upon closer inspection, her entire face bore an uncanny resemblance to Emperor Yuanda himself. Emperor Yuanda leapt to his feet in fury. The princess has lost her mind. Strike her mouth. Drag her away. Imprison her for life. The princess continued her delirious ranting. Eunuchs by the emperor's side obeyed orders, striking her mouth with a paddle until blood flowed freely. Only then did she cease struggling, limp as a dead fish. The emperor's fury was palpable. Crushed under the weight of absolute imperial power, I found myself trapped in a passive position. Having inadvertently exposed such a scandal, I might well face death myself. But who could have imagined the truth would be so absurd? The sound of the bamboo paddle striking her face still echoed, filling me with dread. Then, a pair of strong hands pulled me close. Startled, I looked up to find Pei Yuan holding me in his embrace, a protective stance. Regardless, in that moment, his arms offered me a profound sense of security. After the punishment ended, as the princess was dragged past me, she suddenly parted her blood-stained lips and asked, "Did you enjoy the taste of the immortal's lust? When father used that potion on me." Princess Huayin's eyes reddened, her gaze filled with sorrow and hatred. That year, I was only 10. I finally recalled what Princess Huayin had said to the crown prince in my past life. She declared, "Your crown princess consort Lin is the bastard child born from my affair with your father." Beneath the thunderstorm, the crown prince suddenly grasped the root of all tragedy. He had married his own sister, fathering 2 children doomed to short lives, while his wife, incited by the princess, poisoned his food daily. His revered father had violated his imperial sister, and he himself, unaware, had committed incest with his half-sister. Blood ties proved unbearable, closest kin plotted against him, his lawful wife poisoned him, the pain of losing 2 sons, a frail constitution, and wars draining his last ounce of vitality. He had done nothing wrong, yet everything conspired to drive him to death. The moment Crown Prince Zhaolin drew his sword to end his life, Princess Huayin laughed maniacally in the rain, shouting at the arriving Emperor Yuanda, "Father, your most outstanding son has died by the hands of your bastard and mine." This time, everything that had driven Pei Yuan to his death was nipped in the bud. Yet suffering remained. Emperor Yuanda wished he could cut out Huayin's tongue to preserve his precarious reputation. Lin Nanshu, who had learned the entire truth, collapsed to the ground, weeping uncontrollably. The imperial consorts present, witnessing this royal scandal, felt their hearts tremble with fear. Each lowered their heads, daring not to speak. Pei Yuan's face paled slightly, clearly unable to accept any of this. If it hadn't been me that night, it would have been Lin Nanshu. Then, these sordid truths would surely strike the crown prince between the eyes someday in the future, driving him to his death. Fortunately, the grave mistake hadn't been committed yet. I managed to turn everything around. Pei Yuan suddenly embraced me. "I keep having the same dream," he whispered. "In it, I slit my own throat on a rainy night, and you rush forward, seizing the blade. The dream was right, Shinqingji. You are my savior." Just as in my past life, the imperial selection concluded hastily. I became the crown prince's resolutely chosen consort. Yet the emperor's gaze that day was filled with murderous intent. I spoke words I shouldn't have, endangering the emperor's illustrious reputation. No wonder Princess Huayin never married. Perhaps even the night before the selection, she remained Emperor Yuanda's sole plaything. She endured such days for nearly 20 years. That day, the princess seemed so fragile. Reflecting now, I realize my words were the final straw that crushed her, drove her mad. Emperor Yuanda intended to kill me. Pei Zhaolin entered the palace, confronting the emperor in the imperial study for an entire day. Ultimately, he secured an imperial edict appointing me as crown princess. He told me, "Father is growing old. On certain matters, he must heed my counsel. Otherwise, who will safeguard his posthumous reputation?" Using that royal scandal, he forced Emperor Yuanda to yield, sparing me and the child within me. After all, the future of Daki now lay in Pei Zhaolin's hands, long beyond the control of that old beast Yuanda. On the day I was crowned crown princess, the crown prince personally felt my true pregnancy pulse. The princess declared with certainty that a pregnancy pulse couldn't appear within 10 days, for she herself had been a mother at 12. Thus, she knew better than any palace matron that I had lied that day. Now, over a month later, the lie has become truth. Pei Yuan was overjoyed, spinning me around like a top 3 times. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince truly adores children. That is why, in my past life, after losing 2 sons, he grieved so deeply it shattered his health. His Highness is my savior. This child and I will be His Highness's saviors too. After the dust settled, I went to the Duke's residence to see Lin Nanshu. Only upon entering did I discover her quarters had been converted from a woodshed. Princess Huayin despised Emperor Yuanda, and naturally, she despised the daughter who carried his bloodline. Sent to the Duke's residence by the princess, she endured tacit approval of their mistreatment of this bastard child, as if such cruelty in her most vulnerable years could avenge that beast of a father. Once Lin Nanshu grew old enough to understand, Princess Huayin reappeared in her life as a benefactor, backing her within the Duke's household and sending her fine garments and imperial pastries. Those accustomed to hardship cling to even the smallest kindness with boundless gratitude. When the crown prince began selecting consorts, Lin Nanshu naturally followed the princess's arrangements. She prepared to marry into the Eastern Palace, intending to destroy the crown prince's body with poison and torment his spirit with their 2 children. Even if it harmed her own health, she didn't care. She was convinced that as long as she excelled in carrying out these tasks, the princess would favor her even more. Yet in her past life, she ended up swallowing poison to take her own life. This lifetime, before her lay the same white silk ribbon that had once been placed before me. From the age of 4, I knew I was merely an outsider living under someone else's roof. The true heiress of the Duke's mansion fawned daily at the mistress's feet. How I envied them! How I longed for a mother by my side. Lin Nanshua clutched the white silk, tilting her head as she gazed at the sunlight streaming through the window, but my mother. She only saw me as a tool for her vengeance. Even that night in the alley, she was the one who sent me there. She was the one who summoned those 3 beggars. She smiled bitterly, raising her hand to reveal the blotchy red rash. She tried to fling the silk ribbon toward the ceiling beam, but I snatched it away. You're a pitiable princess too. If you must hate, don't hate only her. Hate the emperor on the dragon throne instead, that beast who raped a young girl. Even if our hatred can't shake imperial power, you must live to see the wicked meet their end. I took the white silk ribbon and pulled Lin Nanshua out the door, stepping into the sunlight, toward the imperial city's Kaishaku. There, prisoners were being hanged. The ones led to the gallows were those 3 beggars. It's not you who should be hanged, it's them. The Eastern Palace had made arrangements with the Ministry of Justice. When those 3 beggars were hanged, their agony far surpassed that of any other criminal. After witnessing this, Lin Nanshu suddenly said to me, "People hanged to death look so hideous when they die. Their tongues even stick out." I gave her a prescription for treating syphilis. Take the medicine regularly. You'll be cured within a year. Doctors say this condition is notoriously difficult to treat. Indeed it was. In my past life, I sought out renowned physicians, enduring acupuncture and medicinal baths for over 2 years before discovering this miraculous formula. I have a distant cousin who suffered from the same ailment. She was cured by this very prescription. Trust it. Lin Nanshua's voice carried a hint of instinctive concern. Your cousin? Her story mirrors yours, yet she lives well now. You mustn't give up. You saw it yourself, death by hanging is hideous. Lin Nanshua looked at me questioningly. Why help me? I countered, as fellow women, why wouldn't I? In the sunlight, she paused, then shared a knowing smile with me. On the day Lin Nanxua left the capital, the princess's household gave her a small wooden box containing Princess Huayin's private possessions accumulated over the years. Confined to her quarters, the princess had, in a moment of clarity, felt guilt toward her daughter. Before her sanity fully slipped away, she used her last shred of reason to transfer all her personal wealth to Lin Nanxua. Let her go to Jiangnan, to find her own world. 3 years later, Emperor Yuanda fell gravely ill. At his deathbed, Pei Yuan calmly inherited the imperial power and the realm. The moment he took the jade seal, Pei Yuan coldly commanded the still-breathing Emperor Yuanda, proclaimed to the realm, the emperor has passed away. Emperor Yuanda stared in shock at this filial son. All knew Crown Prince Zhaolin as unparalleled in loyalty and filial piety. No one could have imagined he would commit such an act. He dismissed everyone from the Jinda Hall. Now I had become the new master of the harem, with all rear operations under my command. Thus, when Princess Huayin disguised as a palace maid entered the Jinda Hall in plain sight, no one noticed. Emperor Yuanda clung to life, barely breathing, when suddenly a white silk cord wrapped around his neck. Instantly, a crushing sensation seized him, snapping his vertebrae. His hands flailed wildly as his eyes rolled back in terror, locking onto Princess Huayin's pale yet strikingly beautiful face. 3 years prior, the emperor had secretly ordered her strangulation in a remote villa. But the emperor did not know that his most favored crown prince had secretly allowed the princess to fake her death and escape. I hid the princess in the outskirts of the capital for 3 more years. All for this very moment. The white silk became Huayin's weapon as she strangled the sovereign, cruelly coaxing him, "Husband, it hurts a little. Bear with it. You always comforted Huayin like this in bed before." Her expression shifted abruptly, now childlike in its cruel innocence. "Father, you violated chastity and propriety, committing incestuous depravity. Your daughter shall personally see you off to fulfill filial duty." With the emperor nominally deceased, no one interfered with this execution. At dawn, Emperor Yuanda was placed in his coffin, the white silk cord still wrapped around his neck. Beneath it lay a severed throat, bones exposed. He had decreed the law: those who violated chastity and morality deserved strangulation. Yet this law should not have claimed only women. He himself deserved to die by such a law. When the deranged Princess Huayin emerged from the Hall of Austere Virtue, her hands stained with the late emperor's blood, her face bore a long-lost serenity. She smiled at me and Pei Yuan with a sense of release. At dawn, Huayin passed away peacefully in the outskirts of the capital. It seemed she had lived only for this one night. To me, the princess was no saint. Poisoned by the immortal's lust herself, she used the same tactics to frame an innocent like me. But I knew better. I couldn't stand by and watch a pure, innocent soul driven mad by cruelty, only for her tormentors to stand in righteous judgment over her. How fitting that Pei Yuan shared my view. Thus, I granted her a merciful end, allowing her to complete her vengeance and depart in peace and tranquility. On the day Pei Zhaolin ascended the throne, I was crowned empress. The century-long Zhaolin era of prosperity for the great Qi dynasty was about to dawn. Pei Yuan understood my intentions. The imperial seal he bestowed upon me carried genuine authority. Upon ascending the imperial consort's position, I issued my first imperial edict as empress. Proclamation to the people of Daki: any man who forces a woman to take her own life after she has lost her virtue shall be hanged on the spot. Those who coerce her shall be deemed accomplices and exiled 3,000 li. Any villain who assaults a young girl shall be handed over to the Ministry of Justice, castrated, and then hanged. Since ancient times, it has never been the victim who should be strangled by the white silk cord, but the perpetrator. As the mother of this nation, I shall sever the countless invisible white ribbons of chastity that bind only women's necks. The end.